Hello, film fans. Welcome to All the Film Things. I'm your host, Elizabeth. Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying this podcast, please leave a review and a rating. Also follow All the Film Things on Instagram for updates and more film things. We are back after a short, unanticipated break. I'm not sure how much I'll talk about this on the podcast, but if you follow All the Film Things on Instagram, you'll see that my best friend, brother, closest person to me, suddenly passed away, and I'm not gonna lie, it's been very hard. So if you hear me more downcast in the future, just know I'm in the darkest time in my life. Hopefully I'll break out of it a bit in some of the conversations I had for this episode, because I got to talk with some people who have become my favorite to discuss film with. Thank you to all of those who shared their condolences and understanding. It's tough for me to talk about, but I wanted to at least address it here because I told people on Instagram, so I feel like the podcast itself comes first. But okay, I don't want to start crying. This is a big episode, and the show must go on, as I've been told. This episode is very special and nearly one of a kind. Last year around this time, I released a tribute episode to Angelina Jolie, one of my very favorite actresses, to celebrate her 50th birthday. And today's episode will be in a similar format to celebrate the centennial birthday of the one and only Marilyn Monroe. The Angelina tribute came together very quickly, but I'm hoping this episode will be more fitting to what I envisioned, since this has been in the works for quite some time. For this episode, I reached out to about half of the past All the Film Things guests about contributing to this episode, and so far I'm very pleased with how it's turning out, but even more so by the wonderful, incredible people who are a part of this episode. In this episode, you'll hear from film historian, author, lecturer Max Alvarez, attorney Katherine Jakeway, festival organizer Monique Madrid, as well as conversations with Anne Hockens, the Director of Communications for the Film Noir Foundation, and Oscar-nominated writer Kim Krizan, who just so happens to be an expert of Marilyn. My conversation with Kim really is sort of the base for this episode, so you'll hear from her the most throughout, and my conversation with Anne is mostly about Don't Bother to Knock. Alright, there is so much to come in this episode, so without further ado, let's celebrate 100 years of Marilyn Monroe.
How did you become a fan of Marilyn Monroe? When I was little, my mom really enjoyed watching old films with me. And she just wanted me to see some classics. She didn't even realize how much of a film buff she was. She was just having me enjoy some of the films she's seen when she was younger. And in turn, she was helping me educate myself in regard to cinema. Some of the films that I used to watch when I was a kid, anything Shirley Temple, Dorothy Dandridge, which was like Carmen Jones. I would see Porgy and Bess with Sidney Poitier. I would see Barefoot in the Park with Robert Redford. And then, of course, I would see Marilyn Monroe films. And I think what led to the Marilyn Monroe films was because I liked Tony Curtis growing up. And so seeing her and him on screen together was just amazing to me. And so I became a fan. I became a fan of any artist during that time. I just thought that era of cinema was something different and iconic. And so I grew up on films. I grew up on, the Black cinema films during that time. We're talking Lena Horne. We're talking, again, Sidney Poitier. We're talking Harry Belafonte. But then also the Marilyn Monroes, the Elizabeth Taylors, the Tony Curtises. Those were also iconic to me. So she was definitely up there, and that's how I became a fan.
Like probably everyone in the world, I feel like I've always known who Marilyn Monroe was by her famous image, but it took a long time before I could actually consider myself a fan of hers. My first memory of Marilyn was probably when I don't even know if I was 10 years old. My dad introduced me to Madonna, and that included the music video for Material Girls. That music video is one of the most iconic and most famous homages to Marilyn. I remember him showing me this music video, and I thought it was so stunning, and I just felt like there was something else going on, or something that I was missing about it. So I asked him, and he told me that this was exactly that, an homage to Marilyn Monroe in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. I'm sure I've seen her before, but that was my earliest, most distinct Marilyn memory, and it took years later until I could consider myself a Marilyn fan. Several years ago, I watched My Week with Marilyn out of longtime curiosity and my being a big fan of Michelle Williams. I remember when this film came out in 2011 because I have this vivid memory of seeing a big cutout display of the poster at a movie theater. But when I finally saw the film, I absolutely loved it. I wasn't familiar with the famous stars depicted like Laurence Olivier and Vivien Leigh, or the Prince and the Showgirl just yet, but I was amazed by Michelle's stellar performance and getting a look at the making of an old film. When I finished watching the film, I realized that I had never seen a Marilyn Monroe film before, and that really bothered me. I was, again, familiar with the image, but not the star or the person herself. I told all this to my grandfather shortly after, a true cinema expert, specifically on the old Hollywood era, and he recommended I watch Some Like It Hot. Some Like It Hot became a significant film in my life for several reasons. Some Like It Hot introduced me to the stars that I came to admire, including Marilyn and Jack Lemmon, as well as Billy Wilder, who is one of my favorite filmmakers of the 20th century. But overall, Some Like It Hot taught me that older films can still be funny. I guess prior to watching it, I thought humor in older films was outdated, and I discovered how wrong I was. That discovery through Some Like It Hot made this film significant in my life because I then started seeking out watching older films, which leads me to the establishing of my love for TCM, the greatest channel on TV. I had of course known of the channel and would tune in here and there, but after Some Like It Hot, I became a regular viewer and really sort of a student of TCM. Kim Krizan, I am very excited for you to join me today. Thank you so much for being a part of this special Marilyn Monroe tribute episode.
I am thrilled to talk to you, Elizabeth, about one of my favorite topics in the world.
Really? Favorite topics in the world?
One of them for sure, because you would not believe the insane collection I have of Marilyn Monroe books.
Wow.
And oh my God. And I have a very large photograph of Marilyn that was given to me by one of Marilyn's early photographers, Bernard of Hollywood. His daughter gave me one of his original photos. And I also participated in an auction of Marilyn Monroe's property, and I managed to snag a couple of original photographs. And besides that, I've even taken friends on a little Marilyn Monroe tour that I created for myself, really, in Los Angeles, so that I would know the places that really where things happened in her life. So yes, one of my favorite topics.
That's incredible. I knew you were an expert, but to even have original photographs, to be gifted that, those photographs must be some of your most prized possessions as such a Marilyn fan.
They are. They really are prized possessions. And I've got one of them framed on my wall. And the other one, I mean, behind special glass so that the light doesn't mess them up. And yeah, they're special.
Yes, definitely. And I've been so curious how you became a Marilyn fan and how long you've been a fan.
That's a great question because,
thank you.
You know, I was born within the year that she died. She died in 1962. And somehow she was in the zeitgeist My entire childhood, I was aware of her. But the interesting thing is that I believe that her type of woman and sex symbol and actress had gone out of vogue when I was a child because she was considered a victim, and the women's movement was starting to really take off when I was a child, and there was a much stronger type of woman who was in vogue. When I was a very small child, the character of Catwoman was so huge on television in the show Batman, and I adored Catwoman. One of the actresses who played her was Julie Newmar, and she was a strong woman, and then there were other strong women, and Marilyn was not really in style, but I was aware of her. And then when I was about 13 years old, I walked to the library and I got a book by a famous novelist named Norman Mailer, who had written some novels that had been famous in the mid 20th century, like The Naked and the Dead. And he was a very macho writer who wrote a book called Marilyn by Norman Mailer. I got the book at the library, brought it home, and it had many, many pictures of Marilyn. And I was only 13 years old or so, but I was struck by, and I would not have known this word back then, I was struck by his sexism.
Wow.
I would not have known or used that word because I was too young and it really wasn't in use yet, that word. But I was struck by how he talked about her as if she was a real human being and she was just some sexy figment of his imagination. I mean, the objectification was incredible. And I thought, gosh, that must have been kind of awful for her to be thought of that way by men, who wrote about her after she died and had a lot of power and a big platform. And so I think that kicked off my interest. Shortly after that, in the 70s, there was this big resurgence of interest in the 1950s. And there was a show on television called The Happy Days. And after that, it seems to me that Marilyn became a subject of interest again. And there were a lot of books about her. And that made me wonder why she was so fascinating to people. And so I started reading books about her and collecting books about her. And I believed that she really hit the consciousness of people. I think she hit that subconscious part of our minds where the archetypal need, that need we have for archetypes. And I think that if you look back at the 20th century and you look at the main characters who float up out of the 20th century as the main personalities or the images, there would be only a tiny handful. Like, maybe, I'm sorry to say, someone like Hitler, someone like Charlie Chaplin, right? Perhaps someone like Elvis Presley, but most definitely Marilyn Monroe would be one of the tiny few who would survive the 20th century as far as icons.
Absolutely.
What is your first memory of Marilyn Monroe? So, my first memory, I think, is everybody's first memory, that iconic skirt blowing in the wind from the street sewer, that gust of wind that comes up and blows her dress. That was just something, I didn't see every day in Hollywood and in cinema. And it was, to me, tastefully done. It was playful. It let you know what kind of actress she was. It was flirty, but it didn't reveal anything. And it was just a very iconic image of Marilyn Monroe. And it set the tone of what kind of actress she was, but not necessarily the person. And I learned a lot more about the person the older I got.
The first Marilyn Monroe film I remember seeing was Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. It was a pristine 16-millimeter dye transfer Technicolor print at the Union Cinema at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee campus. I was 13. Around the same time, I saw a pan and scan print of How to Marry a Millionaire, the second CinemaScope movie ever released. I enjoyed watching Marilyn both times, but I don't recall really connecting with her until I finally got to see Some Like It Hot at that same Union Cinema 1 year later.
Marilyn Monroe as Norma Jean. I would love for there to be a documentary that just hones in. Don't even tell me about Hollywood. I just want to know deeper and deeper of the early mindset of Norma Jean. I know there are documentaries that talk about it, but I want to know more, especially, I want to hear from her or people around her that can speak to how she came to the name Marilyn Monroe and what it was like in her humble beginnings that she channeled into wanting to be a movie star.
It's incredible that you two are both from the very same town of Hawthorne, California. Are there any touristy Maryland sites that you visited there that formed your expertise and interest in Maryland?
Well, I was very excited to find out that Marilyn Monroe and I and the Beach Boys are all from Hawthorne, California. Hawthorne is a suburb of Los Angeles. It's connected to Los Angeles. It's by the beach. But when Marilyn was born, Hawthorne was just a little farming community. When I was born, it was like a surfing town. But Hawthorne was the place where one of her foster families lived. They were this very religious couple who took in orphan children or foster children, and they gave them a very structured childhood where this was a rough time. They gave them, the food and the bed and everything they needed to get by. But Marilyn, unfortunately, didn't remember it as the happiest time.
Yeah.
But I've been to the house, and I don't know that it's the original house that Marilyn lived in. I don't believe it is, because I think that was a farmhouse, and I think it's been kind of replaced now. But besides the Hawthorne location, I created this gigantic little tour for myself that I've taken a couple of friends on. And there's the orphanage that was actually the orphanage in Los Angeles was still running as an orphanage until about 10 or so years ago.
Oh, wow.
And it's kind of in the middle, right in the middle of Los Angeles. There's also her handprints are at Grauman's Chinese Theater.
Oh, yes.
Yes, off of Hollywood Boulevard. You can visit her crypt, which is at the Westwood Cemetery, which is off of Wilshire Boulevard. And there's also, there are many, many, many places. But for example, there's the war munitions factory she worked in the early 1940s when she was discovered. And that is in what we call the Valley out here. And it's still like a place where there's some sort of manufacturing or something going on. But there are also a lot of houses you can see. For example, the house she lived in with Joe DiMaggio, and that's in a really nice part of Beverly Hills. So you can drive by apartments that she lived in and restaurants that she went to, and it's all kind of fun because, Los Angeles, it doesn't have a long history, but what it does have is kind of fun.
What does Marilyn represent to you?
The fact that this girl who was born into the most painful circumstances. Her mom was mentally ill. She didn't have a dad. Her dad rejected her when she tried to contact him. She had nothing. And she created herself in a world that made it very difficult for a young woman to create herself. She made her mark. I wish that she knew how much she made her mark, but she inspires people to feel, to be sensitive, and to be vulnerable. And feminine is the word that Lee Strasberg used, the eternal feminine.
Mm-hmm.
I think we might say she expressed her feelings and her authenticity, and allows us to dig down deeply and find feelings within ourselves that are kind of hard to express in a harsh world. And I suppose she also represents that Cinderella to me, that lost girl who has hope. And she went all the way. She was absolutely the dregs of society, an orphan girl who ended up going to the top. You know, she met a queen. She was the number one star of Hollywood. She had unbelievable power, and the powers that be at the studio were fighting her every step of the way, but she was so smart that she could outplay them. The men who controlled the studios came from this mentality that they were creating factories.
Yep.
Then the stars were products. They weren't human beings, they were products. And so they were created. And they tried to give her a different name, because we know that Marilyn Monroe was, at that point, when she was at the studio, Norma Jean, and she had her husband's last name, Doherty.
Mm-hmm.
So, these men, and it may not have been with malice, but they were trying to create these women, and the women had no choice really but to go along. They couldn't fight it at that point.
Well, they crafted Marilyn, right? Because didn't she dye her hair blonde because of the studio?
She dyed her hair blonde because of her modeling boss. Before Marilyn was in the movies, she was a model, and she belonged to this modeling organization run by a lady called Evelyn, I think I'm saying her name correctly, Snively. Mm-hmm. And Marilyn, at that point, was a very, very popular model as Norma Jean. But Mrs. Snively said, Norma Jean, you'll get a lot more advertisements if you dye your hair blonde. And Norma Jean said, I would really rather be natural. And Miss Snively said, well, I understand, but you'll get more work. Don't you want more work? So Marilyn went to a shop, and I've actually been to the shop. I'm trying to remember if it's on Hollywood Boulevard. I think it's Hollywood Boulevard. And she got her hair dyed blonde. Of course, at first, they didn't do a very good job. It was sort of brassy at first, but eventually they got it right. And sure enough, Norma Jean did get a lot more advertisements and a lot more work from dyeing her hair. So she stuck with it.
What does Marilyn represent to you? Vulnerability. I think what I liked about her is, the more I learned about her, the more I realized she was just a very vulnerable human that just ultimately wanted to be loved, wanted to be appreciated, and wanted to be celebrated as an artist. And so, unfortunately, artists, the more famous they become tethered to their personal life, and in real life start to intermingle. And so for me, what Marilyn represented was femininity, vulnerability, but she also emphasized real. Why do I say that? like, for example, one of my favorite stories of her that I learned when I became an adult was that Marilyn Monroe used her platform when Ella Fitzgerald was being mistreated at a nightclub. And Marilyn Monroe stepped in to ensure that she was able to perform. She didn't have to do that. She could have just stayed in her lane of just being the pretty blonde that showed up. But instead, she used her power to show that, we are all human and, we deserve our time and our talents to be seen. And so I like that human side of her. And even I'm sure there's more stories that we just don't know about that fit to that realm. I would love to learn more about that side of her. In regard to femininity, clearly she was a woman, and she owned it and she was clearly proud of it. And then to add to it, she was a curvy woman. I know her figure is very much marveled by men and women alike, but, she represented for women that weren't a size 2. And I think that was very iconic at that time. You didn't have to be tiny to be considered beautiful. And so her femininity mattered because it allowed for more actresses of any size to be seen as beautiful on the screen, and can be a love interest if they wanted to on the screen. And then, of course, for me, in regard to Marilyn Monroe, I think what's important to understand is that Marilyn was really a human that really tried to carve her lane out, and she really wanted to be known. And, she moved to Hollywood wanting to be famous and not knowing how famous she was going to be even after death. And everything she did, I'm sure she didn't realize that that was going to be an iconic move from, the people she met, the people she acted with, the films that she made, whether they were hits or not, everybody knows of a Marilyn Monroe film. She is definitely one of those artists that most everybody on the planet knows. So that's really cool. And that's really awesome to know about her.
I mean, when I think about her, the first thing that comes to mind is just how much of a fashion icon she was. I think that she was super inspirational for beauty and fashion. And I think, beyond anything else, it is a huge influence. Like, she was just a star. And I think that her influence on fashion and beauty was huge. And that's what I think of when I think of her, is just her, how glamorous she was.
Marilyn, to me, represents beauty, perfection, sex appeal. She really made people happy and brought a light into this world. But I also think she represents 1950s materialism. In films like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, her eyes on the diamonds, the expensive clothing. With How to Marry a Millionaire, her and her friends are going after, truly as the film's title suggests, finding a millionaire. Because again, it's all about the expensive clothing, the materialistic items. And I think that's part of why she was so important to 1950s cinema, to American cinema, because she represented that time very distinctly. You can go back and see in Don't Bother to Knock, for one example, there's that hint of materialism. So even before she was made to be this star, this blonde bombshell, we can see a slow, interestingly enough, foreshadowing of that being the focus point of what she comes to represent in American culture, especially in the 50s. Post-World War II, there was a boom for materialism, for purchasing things, and Marilyn was expensive. She was a luxury. She was a commodity by Hollywood. I think luxury is actually a great word to describe Marilyn. She was luxurious. She was admired. So, again, while what comes to mind first and foremost is her lightness and beauty, there is that definite side of her representing 1950s materialism.
What did Marilyn Monroe symbolize to me? Well, I saw her as the colorful transition from somewhat staid 1940s screen actresses to the less inhibited 1960s screen actresses. She helped break down some of the restrictions placed on the levels of screen permissiveness in commercial Hollywood movies. Her celluloid sexiness, combined with her flawless comic timing and coy manipulation of people, especially men, in her movies, has made her performances appear just as fresh today as they were in original release.
Anne Hockens, I'm so glad you're joining me for this Marilyn episode. This is a very special episode, and I'm so glad you're a part of it.
Thank you for having me as part of it. I'm glad this worked out that I could get to be part of it.
Yes, I'm so glad you are. What does Marilyn represent to you?
I mean, I just think of her as an actress. I don't have a lot of, because I know a lot of people have, like, I think a lot around her. And for me, I just think of her as just another actress, which would probably make her happy.
Yeah.
That's kind of what she wanted to be. And, of course, me being me, well, I love Bus Stop because that's just a great performance.
What?
Are you surprised by that?
Yes, absolutely.
She's great in Bus Stop. I love that character.
But it's a horror film in disguise of a rom-com. I watched it for the first time on Saturday, absolutely horrified.
I wasn't expecting such a visceral reaction.
I'm sorry. I am shocked. Bus Stop is the first film you go to.
Yeah, well, I just, it's okay. I just in the scene where she's performing and she's throwing the switches herself for her with her feet. That was so great. It was just so, and I just liked that it's the only film of hers I feel like in a lot of ways where they ever explore like the negative side of beauty and being attractive, of not being taken seriously and stuff like that. I mean, because I don't know. So I think that's why I like the film.
Did you find it to be a horror film? Were you horrified for her character?
No, I don't think it. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've seen it, by the way. So
TCM's playing it next month.
Maybe I should. I guess I'm gonna have to watch it again and look at it from a different perspective. But overall, out of all her films, Don't Bother to Knock is actually my favorite.
That's like your very favorite film.
That's my very favorite. Yeah.
I was so glad that you wanted to discuss Don't Bother to Knock because not many people seem to be aware of this film. Yet it's one of her very best and absolutely one of her greatest performances is in this film.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously it's very different for her because it's a film noir and she plays an emotionally disturbed character and she's really terrific in it. And it's so different from anything else that she did.
Because you said that, you just see Marilyn as an actress, do you think Marilyn wanted to play more villainous roles like this but was held back by her team and maybe even 20th Century Fox, who had her contracted for years?
I mean, I think probably, my guess would be she would just sort of like to play a range of characters.
Yeah.
Because she wanted to be she wanted to act. She didn't want to just be a movie star. And so, yeah, I think she probably would have done it. And, with her films, like Don't Bother to Knock was very early in her career before they sort of forged the image that they wanted for her. And, everybody in the studio system, but especially everybody at Fox, was pretty tied into, what they wanted to do.
This is a fascinating film. This is my second favorite film, if I'm not including All About Eve in terms of Marilyn's films.
Yeah, and I'm not counting Asphalt Jungle. She's great in the Asphalt Jungle, but it's just not, I don't think of that as a Marilyn Monroe film.
No, that was another film early on in her career. She seemed to have more versatility before she became the star and she started to make the lighter films like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and How to Marry a Millionaire. That became what she was known for, those lighter films. But she was brilliant as a villain in Don't Bother to Knock, someone so menacing.
Yeah, she's really scary in the film. For people that haven't seen it, you should see it. But, she basically, these people are in a hotel, a couple, and they have a child, and they basically ask the front desk for a babysitter. So I think it's the bellhop. He has his niece do the babysitting, but she's mentally unwell and things get out of hand. And then she encounters Richard Widmark, and then he gets swept up into this as well.
Mm-hmm. And he's a noir staple. Yeah.
It is, and it's something that, like I said, I think a lot of people haven't seen it. I don't feel it's as well known.
It should be more well known because Marilyn is. A lot of people know Marilyn, but they may not know her films. And this is a great film to see in her work. Very, very different, as we've said.
Yeah, because I think she's like kind of like Audrey Hepburn. It's the same thing. It's like I even wonder if people have actually seen their films. That have stuff with their images on it. It's like, yeah, but have you actually seen any of her films? You know, because these women did more than just, you know, it seems like with Audrey Hepburn, you know, she did a lot more than just Breakfast at Tiffany's. That was one of many roles, you know. And, you know, with Marilyn, I think people have that image from the 7-Year Itch in their head. And it's like, she did way more than that. You know, she did a lot of things.
Well, the 7-Year Itch is actually, go ahead.
Oh, and also, I just don't like the fact that people get like so vested in Marilyn's personal life and what happened to her and stuff like that. Like, I think that's really like, I feel like that's just sort of completely like kind of undercut what a star she was in a way, that she was actually a really huge star. And it was just, she was also a very good actress and took acting. She was a serious person.
Mm-hmm. I like that you mentioned the 7-Year Itch because that's an interesting film to compare with this because both deal with fantasy. The 7-Year Itch is more of a male fantasy, and especially the reveal towards the end suggesting that she's playing herself. I thought that was pretty well done. But in this film, her character's enveloped in a fantasy. She goes into her fantasy world. She doesn't want to be in reality.
Yeah, which is very, even though you still have Richard Widmark seeing her a certain way, you know, so there's still that element of sort of male fantasy on his half, which goes very badly for him.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, she doesn't want to deal with the reality that she's in. You know, because it's too painful, and you kind of learn why. And because she has to be threatening and menacing, but she also has to be sort of vulnerable at the same time too. Because I mean, it's not like she's being malicious on purpose. She's ill.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a tricky thing to play, and I think she does it really well.
It's very tricky to play, and now I'm just thinking of the ending. How there was so much understanding with her. There weren't, despite what she did. The crowd wasn't yelling at her, take her away, or anything like that. Richard Widmark's character really made sure everyone back off because he realized that she wasn't trying to hurt anyone, but she was close while in that daze.
Yeah, which is pretty ahead of its time. And it's really interesting compared to the book because it's based on the story Mischief by Charlotte Armstrong, who's one of the greatest crime writers of all time and extremely popular and well regarded at the time. And not as well known now, but all her books have been republished, which makes me happy. But I love the original because it has a lot of stuff from the point of view of the mother of the child. And what's kind of interesting is at the end, the mother is the one that like confronts this woman that's threatening her child, and she just goes completely feral. It's really great and very much and I think she calls back to her time, like, you know, in sports when she was younger, and you just see her really go for it, and it's so realistic. And that final confrontation is so great because you're really seeing, I think, a very truthful thing that people don't like to think about is that mothers can be fierce.
Yeah.
So I reckon, you know, it's a very different animal from the movie, but I did like the movie very much, you know.
Thinking about the ending, we see a little bit of Nell wrestling with the mother, but when she goes in and we hear her scream, we don't see anything. But we can imagine, I'm sure the book goes into more detail, that she finds Nell strangling her child, Bunny.
Yeah, so exactly. So that's why she just completely like goes full mama bear, you know, which, you know, I just felt like, because I guess what I do like about the original book is just how much of it is about the mom and where she's at in life, which Charlotte Armstrong was really good at that. Like, if there was a mother character, they were like a full dimensional person. They weren't just there to be a mother. She was a mother herself, so I believe, so that may have something to do with it. But she wrote women characters in a really different way, obviously, from the male counterpart at that time.
When Nell sneaks off when everyone's talking about her, there's a bunch of people in the apartment, well, the hotel room. She sneaks off, and the mother isn't downstairs, but she is hugging her child, saying, I guess we've never come across anyone like her before. But if she was downstairs, I wonder how the book portrays it, but I imagine if she was downstairs, maybe would she have that understanding like the rest of the group, or would she be calling for her to be taken away immediately in a very angry demeanor?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember because it's been a while since I've read the book, so it's kind of hard to quite. So I'm going to go from sort of memory because it's really about no, I don't think she particularly has that more empathetic moment with her. She doesn't care. She's a threat to her child.
Yeah.
She's not gonna, which I think is more kind of. I mean, we would all like to think that we would be empathetic in that moment. That if somebody was hurting my kid, any kind of empathy for them would just be gone at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe later when I reflected on it, I think in the heat of the moment, I'm not going to care.
Yeah.
I think that we have a natural instinct to protect our young.
Yeah, and she had that instinct, as we see in the film. She's like, I think I want to check in and call to make sure Bunny's okay. And I love how that kind of begins the film becoming a thriller, because then we're getting parallel editing between her. There's a concerned older couple after Bunny is nearly out the window, and then the parallel editing paces up because there's the detective getting involved, the female operators understanding something's going on. The mother instinct is really what slowly begins the true menacing part of the film, the thrilling part of the film.
Yeah, and it really is a very thrilling. I mean, they really amp up the suspense.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're really on the edge of your seat, and there is always something more kind of scary and suspenseful when a child is involved.
Oh yeah.
That always kind of amps up the suspense, just because I think we all have sort of an instinct to protect children. So we really get agitated when kids are involved. It just takes it up a notch, just sort of on itself, and trying to figure out what's going on. That these people are having to try and figure out what's going on, because they don't have the information that the audience has.
Well, that's part of why I thought this was quite ahead of its time, because you don't often see a kid in danger like this. And especially for Marilyn to be the villain makes this even more interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's something Noir was really willing to do that other genres won't, because you have the window too, which is really terrifying. So definitely I think you got that more in, I mean, you have it in horror too.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I think film noir was, you could kind of see it in something like that, or maybe a B Western, but you wouldn't necessarily see that in a more mainstream film.
That moment where Nell is considering pushing her forward is very suspenseful, but also thinking about, would Bunny scream out? But she doesn't. She just innocently just wants to see the people.
Yeah, which makes it even more, I don't know what the word is, but it's more intense, I guess, because Bunny doesn't know that the danger that she's in, because she's a child and she can't really comprehend that an adult would do something like that.
Yeah.
That kind of implicit trust that children have in adults, which can be, unfortunately betrayed.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, when the married couple that screamed out, the wife did, they come and they confront Marilyn's character, Nell. And when Richard Widmark's character goes off, she puts the blame on him because that's more understandable. Like, oh, it's probably a man. It's less suspecting for Nell to be the culprit.
Yeah, because I think there's always a natural assumption, even now in culture, we just have a blind spot that women can hurt children. Like, we don't want to, we have a huge resistance to accepting that,
Yeah.
Plus, it's Richard Widmark. I mean, we've seen him do those terrible things in other movies.
Yeah. And let's see. So Nell is very much, she wants to stay in her fantasy. She's clearly heartbroken over the loss of what would be her husband, Philip, but he dies in the war. he was a soldier in the war through the Air Force, I imagine, since he was a pilot. Was the jewelry being accessible what caused her to recede back to her unwell state? Because she had been well for a little while, but it seemed like that, I mean, that's kind of a famous shot of her putting on the earrings that glow to her.
Yeah, and I think that's supposed to be the thing that triggers her off, and which is kind of sort of the popular understanding of psychology at the time, that, they tended to like to have something like that.
Now, her uncle becomes more threatening to her, even though the child she puts all blame on at the end of the day. She is threatened by anyone who can get between her and Philip, who she thinks Richard Widmark's character is. She's inserting her memories and suggesting that she will find someone else, which was suggested by her uncle. She substitutes that for Jed, and that's why she kind of invites him over. But the point when her uncle smears her lipstick off and we see her enraged, I think is one of the greatest moments of her career.
Her acting in there, especially because we never really got to see her. I mean, like that kind of anger from her. Yeah. Right. She's always more, even if her character gets upset or whatever, it's not like that. It's not like this really intense intensity.
It was all in the eyes.
And the more we're talking about this, the more I realize like how much I really want people to see this film.
Yes. Yeah. I felt the same way after rewatching it yesterday. I thought, last week. I watched this one last week. I thought, how do people not know of this film? It's incredible. And you can, honestly, I found it on Facebook. Like, it's not that hard to find.
Yeah, and I think, too, it's sort of like I think people that, like, are kind of noir fans know it, but then people that are just more, it's not, well, you know what I mean? Like, so, yeah, if you're a noir fan, you know about it. But, yeah, if you're not, then it's not nearly, it's just, because it's, it's black and white, just early in her career, it's a really different role. And I think, like, I guess that was, I was saying before about her being, my interest in her is as an actress, is I think that with the sort of mythologizing about her in terms of her personal life and in this image people have of her, it's like, yeah, but she did this other stuff. I mean, people know the Misfits. Yes. But they don't really know like Asphalt Jungle, which she's great, or All About Eve. Once again, very small role, but she's really great in both those films. Really memorable characters. But those are both, in a way, still part of the type that she would go on to play. This film is a real departure where it's simply not about, because even in the Misfits, it's still about how men react to her, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, whereas this is really about her and her character. It's not how men see her. That's not really important. I mean, all that happens with that is this guy gets caught up in a really bad situation. But, it's about her, and it's about her having this, mental health crisis. And it's just, it's so different from everything else she did. And not just because she's playing someone that in a way is villainous, but because it's really, it's just not her being a siren or not being a siren, or what's worse with Monroe, which I always disliked, was I really like gentlemen who prefer blondes. I mean, I think that's a great role, but it's like in other things, it just felt like this idea that a woman can be really sexually attractive and not really be cognizant of her being sexually attractive is just ridiculous. And and like I said, and for that just not to even be part of this, the story is really about a character who's dangerous and going through a crisis that's having a really disastrous effect on people around her. So it's I mean, I don't know. I like it.
Yeah, it's, again, one of her best, but you got me thinking about how this could tie into her work that she's most known for and how it is so different. But there is that hint of materialism that she began to represent as one of the biggest stars of the 50s. And it's a very prominent theme or just at least focus point of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and How to Marry a Millionaire, is that the materialism aspect. She wants the pretty things. She puts on this jewelry. She puts on this dress. And she wishes for, she goes and looks past the stores and she's window wishing, I think she said.
Yeah.
And that's all kind of like a hint to what she will become to symbolize for the 50s, I think.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I never thought of that, but you're right.
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
I think that comes with being a wife in her eyes, because if she gets a husband, then she gets those pretty things. And there's a line towards the end when she was concerned about Jed leaving. She says that she may never see him again, and it's dangerous to fly over the ocean. She says to herself, kind of, what will become of me? And that line, I think, is one of the key lines. Like, it's kind of blown past so easily because it's so simply said, but I feel like this is the line. This is what kind of horrifies her, not only because she lost Philip, the one that she really loved and had imagined this whole future for. She was so close to getting married to him, but because with him she would get the dresses, the nice things, the jewelry, and now she's wearing a dress that's torn and that's not so pretty, and I think that's very much part of keeping the fantasy alive for her.
Yeah. And I think too, and also just financial security in itself.
Yeah.
That was something that was going to only happen if she was married. I mean, she's having to live with, uncle and babysit and stuff. She doesn't have those resources to get the things that she wants on her own.
And she's told that she can get those things and that she can meet someone like Philip, and that's when we see her kind of glow for a bit. That's just before she invites Jed over across the way. And then she just starts inserting her fantasy of Philip onto him.
Yeah, and what she's lost.
Yes. Were you completely shocked when Nell and her innocent daydreaming became a threat?
Yeah, the first time you watch it, I mean, because it kind of says on the cover, right, that this is her dark role, and you know what I mean. So you have a bit of a spoiler when you read a cover, but at the same time, I don't think because I think if I remember the original descriptions, it kind of made it more about her and him, and not so much about she's threatening the life of a child. I mean, that feels like that is very shocking when you watch it. When you realize, oh, the kid's really in danger. This is really bad, and even though there is suspense about, hey, is this guy going to get blamed for this and that kind of stuff. I mean, there is that element of it. But like I said, if I remember correctly, that was sort of the description you got was more of about him getting caught up with her and her being a femme fatale. And she's not really a femme fatale. She's just, you know what I mean? She's not really a femme fatale. It's much more, much beyond that.
Yeah.
And like I said, so I wasn't really expecting it to get so dangerous for the child, I guess, the first time I watched it. That was the part that really took me by surprise.
So you were already tipped off before watching that this is not the Marilyn you're accustomed to.
Yeah, that was like on the box of back in the old days when you had we rented things on VHS. There were descriptions on the back of boxes. And
yes.
Yeah, so this one very much was sort of emphasizing that it was really a different role for her. But then, like I said, it just seemed like the reputation of it was more her femme fatale role. And I was like, no, this isn't her femme fatale role. This is like better than a femme fatale role. This is like a complex role, and there's some real suspense because it is dealing with this danger to this child, which really does, really amp it up in a way.
Mm-hmm. That's so interesting. I went into this film completely blind, so I had no idea what to expect and how menacing and terrifying Marilyn would be and the length she would go to.
Yeah, right. And like I said, even with the thing with being, kind of, this is her femme fatale role or whatever, it doesn't really prepare you for that because it's, like I said, it's just not like, oh, she's, Richard Widmark's going to get caught up in her web kind of thing. It's a lot worse.
Yes.
It's one thing for an adult, especially the male character making a transgression and, hey, this backfires on you is one thing, but the life of a child is a completely different thing. And that she's very ill, too.
Yes.
That she's delusional.
Do you find, I don't know, maybe it's because of the ending, do you find this film and the character of Nell similar to Blanche in A Streetcar Named Desire?
I don't know. The thing about Blanche that they kind of gloss over, they think would be like a bigger deal now, is the fact that she got kicked out of her teaching job for, being sexually inappropriate with one of her students, which I think in that time, like, I think people take that thing more seriously now, in the sense that, yeah, she still lost her job or whatever, but we see, not always, unfortunately, but we're more capable of seeing that a male student is being abused when that's happening, which I think is something that's changed over the years. But no, because I feel like, Blanche is sort of more victimized, I guess, and I don't know. To me, it's a different thing, and also that I don't know. I don't know. To me, they're very different beasts. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not a huge Tennessee Williams fan, so that also probably. As you know, I don't like Clifford Odets either.
Yes.
I don't like forward writing in my plays.
Yeah, Clash by Night. I understand why you're not so crazy about that one. That was underwhelming to me.
Yeah. Yeah, even though I love Robert Ryan and Barbara Stanwyck's chemistry, which is, the film is great for that. I mean, their chemistry is unbelievable. And I really like Marilyn Monroe very much in that film. I think she's very good in that film. It's just it's a supporting role, but she does a good job in it.
I liked her alongside Barbara Stanwyck because they're two very different actresses. One's more of a movie star, one's more of an actress, and it was great to see them together on screen. Yeah,
and I think they were, I like seeing them together because they're so different too, and it's specific too in the way that Stanwyck really commanded respect from people that Marilyn really didn't get.
Yeah.
And that Stanwyck had an inner grit and ability to deal with Hollywood, and survive it in a way that Monroe just didn't too. If we're talking more on the personal sides of things, is that Stanny was like Joan Crawford and Betty Davis. They were just they could take care of themselves.
Yeah. Not out of Katharine Hepburn there.
And Katharine Hepburn. Yeah, Katharine Hepburn was really kind of a pushover to men. I mean, especially Tracy treated her like crap.
Oh yeah, that's true.
People always talk about that, but she was I don't know. I mean, she was a very strong person, but
he was her weakness.
Yeah, definitely. But she certainly survived the studio system with no problem. And she wasn't going to be chewed up by it. She might, she was in a long, torturous relationship, but she still had a great career in life and lived life on her own terms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll give you a top three. So we're going to change the question to, do you have a top three favorite Marilyn Monroe film list? So coming in third place, I'm going to say The Misfits. Coming in second place, Some Like It Hot. And coming in first place, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
Gentlemen Prefer Blondes is a great film, all the way. It's a Howard Hawks film. She and Jane Russell have fantastic chemistry. It's very funny. She gets to play someone that's actually very smart, even though she comes across as ditzy. She's not, that woman is. And I like that role in particular. Of course, it's a Hawks film, as opposed to later when she was that sexy kind of symbol in a ditz, but not smart and clever the way her character really is in that film. She knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
That's
part of why I like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Initially, I didn't really care for it, but the second time I watched it, I had more respect for her character, and I saw the intelligence of her character. So, and she and Jane Russell, they should have made more films together. They were an excellent duo.
Yeah, and it was a great film about friendship. And I love how the end scene at the double wedding is framed, because he frames it where it almost looks like her and Marilyn are getting married.
Yeah.
The way he frames it, that they're standing together at the altar.
Step by step.
Really nice. Yeah, exactly. And it's that real tribute. And it's a great film about female friendship, too.
It is. It really is.
If I had to classify Marilyn's top 5 films, I'd list them in the following order. Some Like It Hot, The 7-Year Itch, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, The Prince and the Showgirl, and The Misfits. With the exception of the 1959 Wilder farce, none of the others are masterpieces. In fact, most of the films Monroe starred or co-starred in were not as memorable as she was. She made them special by her incredible camera presence, which Billy Wilder heralded as the best he'd ever observed from a movie star.
I love that Monique changed the question to be a top 3 rather than a top 5, because I was hard-pressed to list a top 5. I didn't think it would be so hard, considering I've seen so many of her films, but Max is right. Marilyn didn't have many masterpieces, but the films that she made are made great because of her. So, that being said, here is my top 5 Marilyn films list. I am excluding All About Eve because Marilyn had a small role in the film. Had it been included, it would be my number 1. So, I'm going to start off with an honorable mention, The Prince and the Showgirl. This is my comfort Marilyn film, and it's an enjoyable watch with a simple plot that dives a bit into fantasy, like many of her films. It's set over the course of just a few days spent with a prince. All right, number 5, I'll put How to Marry a Millionaire. Number 4, The Misfits. Niagara, and number 3. 2, Don't Bother to Knock. And number 1, Some Like It Hot.
She's so great in Some Like It Hot, but I think she was embarrassed about that movie because she said, Some Like It Hot is considered possibly the best comedy of all time.
Yeah.
And yet she was embarrassed because she said, I play someone who's so dumb that she doesn't even know that these are men in women's dresses. So she, it's just, I think she was just at that point getting sick and tired of playing a dumb bunny,
Yeah.
She was so good at it.
Yeah,
that
it sounds she's hard on herself.
Yes, very much so. And, Billy Wilder had a hard time with her because she was having a lot of trouble with pills at that point. And her, she, at some point she was pregnant and then lost the baby and everything. So it was a tough point for her. But when she had to do so many takes and she was late, but her performance is genius.
It is. It's sad to hear that she felt her character should have known they were men because I don't know, to an audience it's convincing, but in color, I guess it was different because that's why they made the film in black and white, to make them more convincing as women. And she had in her contract or something that she needed to be shot in color, so that was a little bit of a issue initially, but I think she had understood what they were trying to achieve with Lemon and Curtis. So
yes,
but she was a great supporting character in that film and very funny with some beautiful performances, heartbreaking and happy. It was just absolutely one of her best films, if not her best film.
One of my favorite stories about Some Like It Hot is that she told Billy Wilder that her first scene needed to be, as she said, kookier. That when she first came on the screen, it needed to suit her character and it needed to suit her image. And so he created the scene in which she's walking down the train platform and the Lemon and Curtis see her walking by. And we realized then that this is going to be trouble because they're pretending that they're men, but she's blasted by the steam from the train. And it's cute because, it blasts her hips and she, and runs and runs. And so it is kooky. It's a kooky scene and it suits her as a comedic character.
Yeah, not over the top, just enough that it wasn't so overly kooky, but just naturally comedic. It was a great moment, great introduction to her.
It is. It's a great introduction.
Do you have a favorite Marilyn film?
Boy, possibly The Misfits, but it is so painful for me to watch that movie because it is excruciating to watch that movie for a number of reasons, because of she is so raw, and the whole subject matter of turning beautiful wild horses into dog food is so upsetting to me.
Yep.
And the fact that Marilyn's marriage was falling apart and that she was really quite tortured during the filming of that movie, all of those things make it very painful. But I do believe that her performance is brilliant, and that at the time the movie was not considered a success, but looking back, I think it's a real triumph. The movie just is incredible.
It's certainly a tough watch, but her performance, it just kind of made me think, because she didn't make too many films in the 60s. Maybe there was one or two others, but this was her last finished film, and it was a lot darker. It kind of proved her versatility. So had she lived through the 60s, do you think Marilyn's personal and professional ambitions are reflected through her character of Rosalind? The personal desire to live, to get away from the city and all the noise, but professionally to seek roles that were a different tone and proved her versatility.
Yes, she so desperately wanted meaty roles, and she knew that she had the chops to deal with them, and yet she was laughed at for that dream, all because she was considered, really, talk about putting women in categories. She was just considered too sexy, nothing but a bit of fluff, when in fact, I believe she was a kind of genius. There was certainly an incredible EQ, emotional intelligence there, but her ability to handle a more challenging role, I think that she may have been given those roles as she aged. And it's exciting to think what she would have been given maybe after she got through the difficult transition of going from sex symbol, let's say, because she was 36 when she died, and that was considered very old back then. Ridiculous as that is.
Yes, it is.
But imagine the kinds of roles that she might have been given in the 70s or the 80s. I think that her husband, Arthur Miller, her third and final husband, tried to give her a meaty role with the Misfits because, of course, he was, America's premier playwright at that point. He had written Death of a Salesman, which is honestly, one of the most fabulous plays to come out of the 20th century. He wrote something for her with the Misfits, target, just for her in her personal struggle. And I think that because their marriage was falling apart, she couldn't quite see it. And I have examples of other ways that she couldn't quite see incredible things that she did at the time. And maybe she could have seen them with hindsight. But there were times when she did other incredible things, and she was just like, no, this is garbage,
She was a perfectionist, right?
She was, and she also was, I think she was obsessed with controlling her image, which is fascinating.
Interesting.
Yeah, because she crafted an image, and she didn't want to deviate from that image. And nobody could do the image except she was the one, it was so pure. But she didn't want to deviate from it. But at the same time, she was so infuriated by the scene she did in the Misfits where she was screaming in the desert at the Cowboys tour. She hated that because she hated it because she said that it made her look like a total idiot, because she should have been talking to them in an intelligent manner about how this was the wrong thing to do. And so I don't think she quite understood the power of that scene. To me, it's so visceral and raw and beautiful, but she was nothing but critical of it.
That's shocking, because that scene, I think, became quite instantly one of my favorite Marilyn moments. But I understand her perspective, because Arthur Miller is this great writer. He could have wrote her a whole scene to have that more intelligent talk with the men. But the camera being at a distance the way it was, her angry, the visceral is the perfect word. It was so striking and so different for her. I wish she appreciated that scene the way that we do. It was an incredible moment in the film.
To me, it was so Jungian or something. It was the feminine. Maybe that's the wrong word to use, but it was the feminine intelligence and appreciation of life screaming at this masculine desire to destroy life.
Yeah.
You know, it was like the counterbalance between creation and destruction. And I thought it was, perfectly symbolized by the fluffy blonde woman screaming in the desert and these tough cowboys ready to kill the horses. I thought, God, the symbolism is brilliant,
Yes.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed The Misfits yesterday. I watched it for the first time, but I was a little surprised by how the film turned. She certainly was the most interesting character in the film. She was at a point in her life where she was lost. She had just gotten divorced, and she just wanted to live. She just wanted to be away from the city. She looked at the city and she thought, oh, everyone's all stressed and busy. She just wanted to live. And it would have been interesting if they kept with the trajectory of following her living rather than seeing these men in their brutal jobs taking that route. It was certainly more devastating, but I just wonder if they stuck more with the focus on her and her character, what that film could have been like, because she was at a really interesting point in her life who recognized that she was sad, but she just lit up the lives of everyone around her with life. They always said that, and it was a beautiful quality within her.
I believe what happened is that the studio demanded that the film be given hope at the end, that we end with that scene with Rosalind and Gay, his name is, played, of course, by Clark Gable, driving into hope. I do believe that is not the strongest ending. I agree with you.
No.
I think it would have been better if it had been just Rosalind, maybe walking with her little suitcase to get on a train or something,
Bringing the dog that she loved with her.
Yes.
She really lit up with that dog.
Yes, very good observation. Yes. But of course, being this was finished in 1961, I believe. So I think that you have to imagine we're just coming out of the 1950s, and there's really no other option for a woman but to have a man in her life. So she's got to be with a man, and they've got to be driving toward a future. The woman can't be alone. There can be no happy ending for the woman alone. So I think these days we could have a happy ending with the woman alone, walking into her future.
Oh, definitely. By the end of that decade of the 60s, New Hollywood was beginning, and wrapping it up in a bow like that was not as forced. Censorship was loosening up. She would have had, I think, looking at The Misfits and Something's Gotta Give, her last film, Uncompleted, and seeing these risks that she takes in her performances, it seemed like the 60s could have been one of Marilyn's greatest eras in Hollywood.
I think you're so right about that, because we were right on the cusp of very daring filmmaking, like Bonnie and Clyde, for example, which only a few years away. And the same with The Graduate. It was
Easy Rider.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, these films were about 4 or 5 years away. And so
67, 69.
Yes. Can you imagine if she had just hung in there? She would have been in her early 40s. She would have still had incredible allure, but she would have been a more mature, seasoned woman who had, been through the mill, and she would have had a lot of heft to her as far as experience goes. She could have handled those parts. And, say, for example, in The Graduate, where we have Anne Bancroft playing a woman who is jaded, that, a Marilyn it would have been so interesting to see her in those roles.
Yes.
So, oh yeah, it's a real tragedy that we lost Marilyn Monroe.
It really is. She could have entered the best time and really took control of her own image in a way that she couldn't have in the 50s.
And you're so right, because the studio system was completely breaking down and the actors were on the verge of owning themselves and no longer being owned by the studios, which was good and bad, but that would have been interesting for her because she did have her own production company in the later 50s, and she did make a movie, The Prince and the Showgirl, with her own production company, which was a big, big deal back in those days to have a woman. Yeah. So she did a lot that people may not be aware of. She was fighting every step of the way in her own way and in a different way than we would, because she was playing the game of the sugar-coated angel, sexy angel, which was what was called for back then.
I wish Marilyn survived the 60s. I feel like she would have had more control over her career in the 60s as the censorship was loosening up. And with her last film being The Misfits, it kind of opened the door to her having more control over her career and going back to having more versatile roles to choose from.
Yeah, and I think sometimes too, it's kind of funny because, of course, the problem with being an aging actress is your roles change and it can be very difficult, especially if you're a sex symbol. But then at the same time, like, I think with like Jessica Lange, I think her roles later in her life were way better than they were when she was younger.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. I really thought like, is it called The Big Fish? The one?
Oh, Big Fish. Is that from 2003?
Yeah. Okay. And I just thought Lange's work from like, well, I mean, I guess you could say Frances, but for me, I think she's gotten to do way more interesting things when she didn't have to be a sex symbol anymore.
Yeah.
And it would have been interesting if Monroe could have navigated post-sex symbolism. Not everybody does. That she could, like just like Catherine Deneuve. I mean, Catherine Deneuve's roles when she got older are really kind of a lot more interesting than the roles she had when she was younger.
Yeah.
Like her work with Ozon, especially. She's gotten to do like a lot more interesting things when she got older and didn't have that sort of having to be the love interest or the sexy woman or whatever. And, I think sometimes that can be liberating. But it's difficult too because there's also like less roles and you kind of have to roll with the punches with that. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I know. It's just a shame because I mean, not that Monroe didn't do a bunch of great films, but they're not really films I revisit either.
Well, yeah, she doesn't have many masterpieces, really. But as Max Alvarez says in this episode, she makes the films she's in memorable.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. She was definitely someone that sort of, yeah, exactly. And, who knows what would have been if she'd been under contract for a different studio than Fox. Mm-hmm. That also, I mean, if her career had been at Warner's or at MGM, it may have been a different story than being at Fox too. Mm-hmm. It just, even though there's lots of great movies coming out of Fox, but you were very much in at Fox. You were very much in, okay, these are the kind of films we do with you. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's hard to tell, because like Stanwyck was never under contract. And I think that's part of why she had so many great films. Mm-hmm. Was that she was her own master and people wanted her, and she wasn't tied to a studio, so she wasn't being forced to do just whatever the studio wanted you to do. Like Betty Davis, who was once called like the fifth Warner brother because she was so contentious at Warner Brothers about like, wanting to do the roles she wanted to do. And I mean, that it makes a difference. So you're right with the breakup of the studio system, but then it's also hard to tell because I mean, would people want her if she wasn't young and sexy anymore? Because some women's careers really end when they're past that stage.
Yeah. Well, she did have a production company, so it would have been interesting to see what she did with that. I mean, The Prince and the Showgirl was a film that she produced under her company. So entering the 60s, she was able to gain that control again. What she could have created for herself is interesting to think about.
Yeah. Yeah, it would have been, because the thing was that she was, like I said, I mean, she was a good actress, you know, and it would have been nice for her to have been able to do more roles that were more challenging and more interesting and more diverse, you know, instead of being sort of like stuck in this kind of routine, you know. And like I said, it's just interesting how different people, because you know, with Alice Faye literally walked out of the height of her stardom and said, I don't need this crap anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done, you know, which is really amazing. And just she did a radio show with her husband, which is really hilarious. I love the Phil Harris Alice Faye show. It's really funny.
Interesting.
You know, and also she really wanted to raise her kids. Funny thing about her is she didn't know how to drive. She'd been in show business for so long that she had to learn how to drive. And she didn't know how to go to the grocery store and just buy food and like all these things, because she was in show business from such a young age. She just never had to, you know, to do the day-to-day things that we just take for granted, because, you know, she started out as a teenager as, you know, a chorus girl, and then her singing got her with Rudy Valley, and she toured with him, and then she got into Hollywood and stuff. I'm sorry, I love Alice Faye, and she was also at Fox. And one more thing about Alice Faye. So Betty Grable and Marilyn, you know, they hired Marilyn Monroe to threaten Betty Grable.
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, and they hired Betty Grable to threaten Alice Faye.
Oh.
And and the thing was Alice Faye was really kind and wonderful to Betty. So, you know, Betty said she gave that to Marilyn when Marilyn came up, you know, and didn't see her as a rival, because Alice didn't treat her like a rival, even though that was exactly what Fox was doing by, you know, hiring the younger blonde. You know, there was that kind of thing. He's just, you know, anyway. I just think it's interesting. But I mean, so you're right though. I mean, it would have been interesting to see, if she'd been able to really be successful with her production company in the 60s, breaking up the studio system, kind of getting out from under that and being able to maybe, you know, find her own projects and develop herself. It's a shame, you know, it's a shame she died so young. I mean, it's tragedy, you know, for someone's mental health issues to, you know, for people not to be helped with those.
It's incredible considering that, as we said, she didn't star in too many masterpieces. She is so beloved and remembered today for being the icon that she was. Yeah,
exactly. But I want people not just to look at her image. I want people to actually watch her films.
Yes, people should watch her films. She's not just a photo or someone to admire. Like, watch her work. She was an actress, first of all.
Can we talk about her costumes a little bit in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes?
Oh, yes. Well, that kind of brings me to a question that I think will be the hardest question I ever ask you. Okay. If you could wear any Marilyn look or dress as Marilyn for a day, which costume or outfit would you choose?
Oh my gosh. There is a costume that pops into my mind that she only wore to a premiere. It was the white version of the pink satin strapless dress that she wore in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes that was designed by William Trevia. And by the way, that pink satin dress that she wore in that fantastic number with all of the guys in the tuxedo, that was a substitute for the dress that William Trevia designed for her. It was like this what do you call fishnet? It was a black fishnet dress that had rhinestones all over it, but the studio decided it was too sexy, or maybe it was like the Code guys decided that it was too sexy. So he had to come up with another sexy dress that didn't show as much. So he designed that pink satin strapless dress, and he also made a white version. Now, if you ask me, that white version of that dress that she wore to some like nondescript premiere, that is quintessential Marilyn. It's white satin. Her skin is luminous. She's not all trashed up with a bunch of stupid jewelry. It's just her. She doesn't have a necklace. She doesn't have a whole bunch of like dangly jewels hanging all over the place. It's just her in her beautiful skin and her just absolute radiance. And to me, there are pictures of her, they're black and white. She's getting out of the car, she's being escorted into the theater. And to me, that is the most beautiful of all the beautiful costumes she ever wore. I would absolutely die. So I told you this before, when I was nominated for an Oscar, I wore a red satin strapless because, hey, it's like, satin strapless to me, I think I was heavily influenced by all those costumes back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Ava Gardner was your prime inspiration for the beautiful red dress.
Absolutely. Ava could knock a satin dress out of the park, and she did many, many times. And gosh, so did Rita Hayworth. I mean, they all did.
Yes.
So,
Gilda.
Oh my God. A Gilda, the black satin. I mean, iconic. I die. Oh, yeah. I die. But yes, somehow Marilyn in that white satin dress, that is the ticket. I believe that she went to that premiere in 1953. And of all the beauties of the 20th century, there's something about that picture that just is otherworldly. Just otherworldly.
Is that your favorite picture of her? Or were the pictures that there was a story behind your favorite Marilyn photos? Is this the picture you were referring to, or was it a specific photo shoot?
There is a specific photo shoot that I am fascinated by, and it happened in November of 1961. So by the way, this is, within the year that she died, this is the month and the year I was born. And the fascinating thing is that she did not know right away that these pictures were any good. But to me, this is the best photo shoot she ever did of all the brilliant photo shoots. And her picture was taken by the fabulous Bert Stern and Andre Dedines and all these, Bernard of Hollywood, and the list is very, very, Cecil Beaton. I mean, the list is very long. But to me, the all-time greatest photo shoot of Marilyn Monroe was taken by Douglas Kirkland, who was only 27 years old. He says that he just lucked into this job as a photographer for Look magazine. Look magazine was huge at that time. And he pitched an idea to Marilyn's people, and he had to go meet her face to face. He's only 27. He's a married man with little kids. And he pitched the idea that he be allowed to take her picture in bed, that he be over her while she was lying in a bed. And she said, well, that's a good idea, but I think I'd have to have white satin sheets. And he said, oh my God, that's it. So I believe that these photos were taken, I think they were in an apartment that she owned. And there was a platform over her bed so that he could sort of hang over the bed about 10 feet over the bed with his camera.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And so she showed up late as always. She was always late.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And they had white satin sheets, and they had champagne ready for her and her favorite Frank Sinatra albums. Mm-hmm. And he hung over the bed, and she said to all of her, there were her people were there, her hair and makeup and her agent and, all these people. And she said to them, hey, do you guys mind? I find that things go better if it's just me and the photographer. Could you guys leave for a bit, please? And so they all took off. And here he was, 27. And he said it was the most intimate thing that, it was very, very emotionally intimate that he was hanging over the bed while she was smiling up at him, rolling around. And he said that at one point she said, "Why don't you come down here?" But he didn't. I think he was a little scared and a little freaked out, but, and he thought maybe this is just part of the, performance of it all. Anyway, after they finished the photo shoot, they drank champagne and just talked about life. And the next morning he ran and got his photos developed and then excitedly took the photos to her. And he said that when he met her, she was in an entirely different frame of mind. She answered the door with dark glasses on. She seemed impatient and her hair was all wrapped up in a scarf. And she very quickly went through the photos and cut the ones that she didn't like with scissors. And the first thing she said to him was, "Well, these aren't great." Mm-hmm. And he was heartbroken. And then as she continued looking through the photos, she was like, "Wait a second, this is a good one. And wait a second, here's a really good one." And gradually she started getting excited and thought, "Oh my God, here's some really nice ones." And so if you look at his photos, there's one where she's hugging a pillow. I believe that instead of looking like blatant sex photos, which I suppose is what a lot of people might think, to me, she looks like an angel in heaven because she's all white. Her hair is white and the lighting is very natural and she's floating in white silk. And to me, it's very, very heavenly and otherworldly. And to me, this is the all-time best photo shoot she ever did.
Looking at these pictures now, there's a glow to her. She seems so relaxed and comfortable. Hugging the pillows, a great shot. I'm seeing now her arms up. She's smiling. She was just so comfortable with the camera. She knew how to light up for the camera.
There's something about her facial expressions that nobody else could do.
Oh.
It's like she was a genius, I think, with the camera. It doesn't look lascivious. I don't know why she could nail the look that reached out past the camera, past all the years. She touched people in their hearts with her photography.
Do I have a favorite Marilyn homage that comes to mind? And recently I went to the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, and I saw one of Andy Warhol's depictions of Marilyn, and it was in very stark colors. It was very colorful. It wasn't lifelike. And I thought that it was such an interesting piece. And so I did some extra reading on it. And there actually is a lot of symbolism to Andy Warhol's depictions of Marilyn. And it also kind of goes into some of the commercialization of Marilyn and how using this icon in another art form, but with different colors. And, some of these prints were just her face over and over in different squares. And I think one of the themes that it spoke to was kind of commercialization and celebrity. Being a celebrity is kind of like a mask. And while, it might look fun and lively, it is, very difficult to be in the limelight and to be portrayed over different kinds of media more than just the one that you create yourself. So I thought that was super interesting, and I think ties into a lot of the story of Marilyn and some of the things that her legacy brings up, or topics that kind of come up when thinking about her as a star.
There have been so many homages to Marilyn over the years, from Madonna's Material Girls music video to Nicole Kidman's rendition of Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend in Moulin Rouge, to Ryan Gosling's I'm Just Ken performance at the 2024 Academy Awards. But my favorite homage is Britney Spears' Lucky music video. Many people are compared to Marilyn, but Britney is one of the very few that rightly can be because they really do share some similarities and even a resemblance. But what this song is about speaks to the immense levels of fame they have both experienced, yet it can resonate with anyone. In the video, Britney plays a beloved Hollywood movie star at the peak of fame named Lucky, whilst appearing as herself. To the world, Lucky, and by extension Britney and Marilyn, has it all, but on the inside she's unsatisfied because fame and materialistic things cannot bring true happiness. The lyrics to the whole song speak to this, but the chorus goes, "She's so lucky, she's a star, but she cries in her lonely heart, thinking, if there's nothing missing in my life, then why do these tears come at night?" In the video, we see her sadness while alone in this beautifully designed grand hotel room wearing a stunning old Hollywood-inspired dress that you could definitely see Marilyn wearing. Her hair is long, wavy, and overall she just looks perfect. Yet when she raises her bedazzled mirror to her face, the sadness is evident. Later in the video, an announcer declares Lucky the winner of the Best Actress Oscar. She walks the red carpet to accept the award as fans cheer her on from both sides, and the paparazzi snaps photos that synchronize to the beat of the song. She smiles while holding the Oscar as she heads back into the limo, but when the doors close, she returns to her somber state, and we soon see her laying on the hotel room bed in a close-up, with mascara running down her face. The song ends with the line, "Why do these tears come at night?" leaving the question open-ended and loneliness uncured. I think this is one of the most clever homages to Marilyn because all of the other examples I can think of are clearly and directly homages that everyone can immediately pick up on. Britney pays homage to Marilyn indirectly through this music video, and Britney specifically wanted to depict Lucky winning an Oscar because she always felt that Marilyn should have earned an Oscar in her career. I could go on discussing the many similarities between Britney and Marilyn, and I nearly almost did because I initially planned to include an analysis of my week with Marilyn in this episode that focuses on the similarities between Britney and Marilyn, from being under the microscope of fame to the loneliness that they kept behind closed doors, but I'll post it on Letterboxd instead.
Another thing is thinking about, the mental health of celebrities, and that type of thing, I think, is also a consideration when you think about, some of the tragedy behind her story. I think it's important to recognize that celebrities are people and they deserve to be treated that way. And, celebrities in the public eye are under a lot of pressure. And, obviously substance abuse becomes a part of that. And I think that, seeing celebrities as people too is a huge consideration because, people leave hate online. People will see a celebrity out in the public and will be badgering them for a picture or whatever. And I think, it's also another consideration when thinking of Marilyn is like how far we've come and, realizing that celebrities are people too and how there's more work to be done there.
In every writing tip and lesson you share from your Patreon channel, The Magic Hour, you're wearing such a stunning outfit with a wide range of a color palette. How has Marilyn inspired your personal style?
Oh, I love that question. Thank you very much for noticing what I'm wearing. Well,
every time. I love your looks. That's part of what excites me when I see your latest video. I'm like, what kind of glamorous look are you wearing today?
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I think one thing I really liked about Marilyn was her simplicity and her glamour. The fact that she forged her own style. She wore simple things, certainly glamorous things, but she never overdid it. Here's the detail I really love about her. Mm-hmm. She would get her hair done by, very talented hairdressers, and then she would mess it up a little bit. And I agree. I think that she would skew things a little bit to make them more natural. I love the details about these little touches, tiny little touches, like just the tiniest little bit of shine or glitter. These are important to the eye.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that it makes me happy to see beautiful things. And so when I do the magic hour, I do think like, what outfit do I feel like goes with the subject matter and goes with my mood?
Oh,
And
interesting.
I'm not the most technical person, so I'm not the greatest yet at photography or lighting or, videoing or anything. But I do love beautiful things, and I try. I try.
Well, I'm surprised because it seems like every look is just perfect, and that's so cool that you associate it with certain lessons and topics that you're talking about each time. That's fascinating.
Oh, thank you. And another thing I think is that Marilyn really figured out what her style was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if each individual really gets in touch with themselves and you don't worry so much about what's in style in the world or what other people are doing, you instead figure out who you are. I think Marilyn was so good at that. And that to me is a real lesson that, I don't think I look anything like Marilyn, but I think her message was to be herself and to, like the modern way we would say it is you do you.
Mm-hmm.
I think Marilyn did Marilyn. And I think if each person does that, they're happier, they're a happier person and they look great.
Absolutely. It's like you said before, authenticity. She was so authentic. And it's so funny to think that she would mess her hair up on her own because she's so, I guess, associated with perfection. And she would just mess it up a little bit just to be more natural.
Isn't that great?
I love that. That's a nice little tidbit to learn. But her collaborations with Travilla were quite legendary. A lot of people, Edith Head back in the day was like one of the greatest designers. But she always stuck with Travilla, most always, to design her costumes.
I don't blame her for sticking with him after what he did for her with the pink satin and the white satin.
Mm-hmm.
I think she knew she found someone who understood her, understood her body, understood how to make her look sexy without being vulgar. And I don't know that Edith Head would have handled Marilyn in the same way. There's something about...
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that he really got her. And, these great stars, they find the person who gets them, like Cher. Bob Mackie designed for Cher, and that, she found her guy. And so I think it must be a wonderful thing and very intimate to find somebody who gets you, gets your spirit, gets your body, gets your look and your style. And I think he really did get Marilyn.
Who would you have loved to see her co-star with in a film? So in regard to women, so I'm going to do a man and a woman. In regard to a woman, I would love, and it's so taboo, but I would love to see it, Dorothy Dandridge. She is a African-American movie star, singer, but also actress, right? She would sing in films and she was lovely. She was the African-American version of Marilyn Monroe to me. On screen, very feminine, very aesthetically pleasing to see. We couldn't take our eyes off their talent on the screen, but yet outside of Hollywood, surrounded by a lot of tragedy, interesting love triangles, and so for me, I would love to see that dynamic because it was taboo at that time. You didn't see two beautiful bombshells of different nationalities really on the screen. It wasn't the norm. And I would have loved to see them sing and dance and play and banter and flirt and be them. on camera, I think they would have been really great friends. And if there was ever a story that connected them two, somebody needs to spill the beans because, they were alive and in Hollywood at the same time, but their paths probably never crossed or I'm not aware of, but I would have loved to see them on screen together. In regard to men, I love Robert Redford. I mean, I know Jane Fonda was his girl, or, some would argue that Barbara Streisand was his girl on screen, but like, I would love to see this beautiful man, but, was deep on the screen, and when he connected with women on screen, he was looking for more than something beyond beauty. And that was always something key when he worked with these beautiful women. Robert knew that they were beautiful, but he wanted more, who's at the heart of this character. And so I would love to have seen him with her because I feel like then we would have saw a different Marilyn. Again, beautiful on the screen, iconic outfits for sure, but you see them talk and just do the movements of film, we would have seen a much deeper level to the character that Marilyn would have played on that screen in that film with him. And I think that would have been maybe even something that could have gotten her a nomination, right? I truly believe that if she had a certain leading man, it would have changed the game for her.
Although she got to act opposite Robert Mitchum and Clark Gable, I'd have liked very much to see Marilyn share a 1950s film with Burt Lancaster. I mean, the mind reels at the thought of such a teaming.
I really would have loved to have seen Marilyn in a film directed by Alfred Hitchcock. I think he would create a role for her that would show her versatility and show her abilities as both being good and evil. So that would have been really fun, like a nice twisted character for Marilyn. That would definitely be one of her most iconic performances, most iconic films. And also, I know Pedro Almodovar loves Marilyn, and considering the roles that he writes for women, I think he would have written a beautiful, just perfect role for her. So I'm going to say Pedro Almodovar. Who else of that time? She worked with Billy Wilder. That's one of the best you can work with. Max Alvarez talks about this later, but she should have gone off to Europe like Jack Nicholson did with The Passenger, like Katharine Hepburn did in Summertime, to film with a European director. That's, again, I just mentioned Almodovar, but European directors really valued women in their films and wrote really great roles. So it would have been great to have seen her directed by Michelangelo Antonioni.
Marilyn acted for Billy Wilder, Howard Hawks, Fritz Lang, George Cukor, and John Huston. But she never acted for William Wyler during the 50s, and I'd have loved to see her in a Wyler film from that era.
As someone who's studied Marilyn over the years, what has it been like to see the evolution of how she's been remembered by historians and her story?
That is an excellent question because you're right. You're right. Those first books I read were written by men, and they did seem to focus on a few things, on her sexiness, her ability to arouse them and arouse their imaginations because she was a fantasy figure. And they did focus quite a bit on the Cinderella nature of her story. She was, she had such awful beginnings, no father, because she was the product of an affair between her mom and her dad, who worked at RKO, where her mom was a film cutter. Her father was a married man, and her mother, of course, got pregnant. This would have been back in 1925. And she had her child, who would have been called back then would have been called illegitimate or a bastard child, or I guess a love child. And then how the mother was mentally ill, and Marilyn had a number of foster homes and even an orphanage. And there's a lot of focus on that. But I found that over the years, women started writing about Marilyn's strength. For example, there was a book written by the famous feminist Gloria Steinem in the 80s that focused on Marilyn as someone who survived, very difficult industry. And Gloria Steinem believed that Marilyn would have become, being a free spirit, which Marilyn certainly was, she would have become stronger. And interestingly, I do believe that Marilyn's great rival, Kim Novak, did that. Kim Novak was actually contracted by, I believe it was Columbia Pictures, to be Marilyn Monroe's rival. Kim Novak, yes, and Kim Novak left Hollywood in the 1960s, lived in this fabulous beach house and painted and had animals galore, and then went up to Oregon and lived on a huge piece of land with animals. So she actually fled Hollywood, and she later said that she did it for her sanity. So I think that in a way, maybe Kim Novak, whom, by the way, I was named after, maybe
Really?
Yes.
I love that.
My father loved Kim Novak.
Like Vertigo, was that one of the main inspirations?
You know what? My father liked the movie Picnic.
Oh, I've been meaning to see that.
Oh, you have to. It's so great. There's this dance scene with William Holden, and it's so good. But I think that Kim Novak, who's still alive, by the way, and she's in her mid-90s now, she lives up there still in Oregon with her animals. And I think that maybe Marilyn would have gone that direction had she survived. But I noticed that another thing happening over the years is that now the books about Marilyn are almost predominantly written by females. There's the one, I think it's by Sarah Churchill.
The Many Lives of Marilyn Monroe.
It is fantastic because it's all about projections. I mean, that book is fantastic. And there are others about how this girl who, Marilyn, Norma Jean, didn't even finish high school. And yet she somehow navigated this incredibly difficult industry and became the number one star. So these books are written by women.
Yeah.
And I think young women are really appreciating what Marilyn went through.
I think Marilyn is a true icon, has inspired so many different art forms, more than just the ones that she created. And I think her story has been a teaching element for a lot of people, and, respecting mental health and learning about that type of thing when it comes to celebrities.
What would I tell Marilyn? I would tell Marilyn, girl, you don't even know how powerful you are. And the reason why I say that is because I personally feel that so many men in Hollywood made her feel small. I really do believe there were moments for her. And again, I'm being speculative based on what I know. So don't quote me. This is just my feels. But I feel like there were a lot of times in her life she felt scared. She felt imposter syndrome. She felt small. And then when she was around women, she felt strong. Or depending on if a man really could see her for who she was, maybe she felt strong. I do believe she had relationships that allowed her to be her true self, but not enough of them. And so I would have loved to tell her, I don't think you know how powerful you are. and hope she understood what I meant by that. And if she didn't, I would continue to tell her just how powerful she is. So that way she knows she can call some shots. You know, I truly believe like how actors turn into directors or turn into writers. I think she could have had fun that way, or maybe even, you know, taught acting classes, you know, been an acting teacher or taught modeling. You know, I really think that she could have been a mentor, or she could have done something more than just sing and act. And so that's why I wanted her to know, I hope you know how powerful you are. Well, I'll say it like that. Girl, you know how powerful you are. But, you know, I would want her to know that. Yeah, for sure.
What would I tell Marilyn if I met her back in the day? Well, I would have said, Marilyn, honey, get out of California. Leave Hollywood. Leave the United States and go to Europe. Star in international co-productions. Then open a modeling school in Paris, or maybe an acting school in London or Rome. Just get out of here. Get a life.
You are a legend for doing 2 episodes in one day. That's never happened before. Thank you.
You're welcome. And tomorrow night I'm shooting Ask Eddie. So
Yes. Everyone should tune in to Ask Eddie. I'm sure there will be an Ask Eddie next week, right?
Yes.
Perfect.
I believe that's correct. Yes, because it's sorry, my brain is so fried right now. Yeah, well,
So Thursday, everyone tune in on Facebook at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and just subscribe to them on YouTube at Noir City, because Ask Eddie is a great show.
Thank you so much. We have fun doing it.
It's a blast to watch, and I love your hot takes, both of your hot takes.
We're both very opinionated, so.
I love it, and I know the audience does too.
Yes, and we appreciate the audience. And I'm really happy you had me. I was really glad I was able to be on your Marilyn show.
I'm so glad you were. Thank you. This episode has kind of there was a hiccup with my morning period, so I wasn't able to get too many conversations in. A lot of people are sending in their audio, but you and Kim Krizan, the Oscar-nominated writer, joined me for conversations. So I'm glad we got to have a conversation to add to this.
Yeah, well, I'm glad too, and I look forward to actually listening to the episode and listening to everybody's comments and the other conversation in there. Yes. I think it'll be really, really interesting. It's nice to she's someone it'll be fun to see a bunch of different perspectives of.
Yes, I've certainly already gotten some differing perspectives. It's going to be interesting. Thank you so much for joining me for this very special Marilyn tribute episode. This has been something I've wanted to do for years, and when you said you were interested in being a part of it, I was especially thrilled because I know you truly admire her and are very knowledgeable about her. I love talking with you in general, but I greatly enjoy discussing cinema with you because you are a fellow researcher and have such a passion for this art form. So thank you for being a part of this episode.
I had such a great time talking with you, Elizabeth. It's a real pleasure. So I just can't wait to see what you do with this.
I hope it'll be as excellent as I envision it with a bunch of different guests. I'm definitely excited for it.
I am too. And you did such a great job last time. And I really like having what you did on my Instagram. So
thank you. It means so much when people compliment those videos because I do take the time to make them. And when people collab on them and spread the word, so you saying that you really loved what I did with our interview means a lot to me. Thank you.
You're doing a really good job. And I think what's going to happen is that over time, you'll find that people discover you and you'll just get more and more followers and you've got a future with this because people will discover it and they'll look forward to the interviews. And it's kind of the buildup in the beginning is a little bit hard, but
yes.
Sometimes it takes a few years to get going. But you do a superb job. So this will be great.
Coming from you, that means the world because you were one of my favorite people to interview, one of my biggest interviews yet. And for you to be so kind and see the potential of me with this podcast is, I'm blown away right now. Thank you for that.
Thanks for letting me share my Marilyn Monroe thoughts on all the film things.
All right, that is the end of this big Marilyn Monroe tribute episode. I hope it turns out well. I hope you all enjoy it. There are not many episodes like this. And again, I want to thank the incredible people who took the time to contribute to this episode. I hope this is a great homage to Marilyn. She is truly a beloved figure, and it's incredible that there's such celebration around her 100th birthday, her centennial birthday. How amazing. That doesn't often happen. Everyone, be sure to check out the episode description to stay updated on all the things these incredible guests are up to, from the upcoming LOL Jax Film Festival, directed by Monique Madrid, to subscribing to Kim Krizan's Writing Sanctuary, The Magic Hour on Patreon. I often conclude episodes with the question, is there a film recommendation, a line from a film, really anything you would like to conclude our episode with today? So for this, I'll reiterate my praise for Don't Bother to Knock. But also, if you haven't seen many Marilyn films, go watch them. She was truly a great actress, and there's more to her than just the photos to adore. Max, Anne, Katherine, Monique, and especially Kim, thank you all again very much for taking the time to be a part of this special episode of All the Film Things. And thank you all for listening. I would like to end with a quote by Marilyn herself. Beneath the makeup and behind the smile, I am just a girl who wishes for the world. Happy 100th birthday to the one and only iconic Marilyn Monroe. Bye, everyone. Special thanks to Kim Krizan, Anne Hockens, Monique Madrid, Max Alvarez, Katherine Jakeway, Dr. Jillian Smith, Cecilia Mueller, Shannon Overbay, and Queston Fisher.